Hello, friends. Hi, I'm Leena Kejriwal. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone here today. In solidarity with UN 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, Missing Link Trust is hosting a panel discussion with Ananya Chatterjee Chakravarti, Chairperson of the West Bengal Commission for Protection of Child Rights, Sunita Krishnan, co-founder of Prajvala, and Vishakha Datta, co-founder of Point of View, on the subject, working with adolescents, sexuality and violence. The campaign will continue on our social media platforms till December 10th, and we invite you to join us, raise your voice, and together we can amplify the voices of women and gender minorities across the world. Don't forget to use the hashtag #HowManyMore, hashtag #SaveMissingGirls. There has been a tremendous cultural and social transformation of sexuality in the last decade. In the process, dimensions, intimate relationships, preferences, and sexual fragments have emerged, and many of which were usually until now really not named and they weren't out in the open. Human sexuality is increasingly being acknowledged worldwide as an important focus of discussion and social movements in contemporary society today. And this is the result in part of contributions from feminist theories, emergence of LGBTQIA plus movements, new movements against sexual abuse, and international AIDS epidemics, which have generated a significant amount of new research on human sexuality. Sexuality is both central to some of the greatest problems of our time and at the core of human well-being for people of all ages. The culture's treatment of sexuality can influence whether an individual is safe or unsafe, ill or healthy, educated or not, employed or enslaved, treated with justice or with contempt. Sex can be an area for contested power relations and result in discrimination, abuse, and violence based on gender and sexual orientation. I would like to now briefly introduce each of our respected panelists who have joined me here today. We have with us Honorable Chairperson of West Bengal Commission of Protection and Child Rights, Ananya Chatterjee and Chakravarti. She is also a national award-winning documentary filmmaker and a broadcast print journalist who has specialized in trafficking and other gender issues. She has been a vocal crusader for women's rights and the first to make a documentary on sexual harassment in the workspace. Vishakha Datta. Hi, Vishakha.
Hi.
Hello, Ananya.
Hi.
Vishakha Datta is an Indian filmmaker, activist, and former journalist. She is the co-founder and executive director of Point of View, based in Mumbai, a non-profit working in the area of gender, sexuality, and women's rights, building and amplifying the voices of women and other marginalized genders. She also serves on the boards of non-profit organizations, including Creating Resources for Empowerment in Action, CREA, and Wikimedia Foundation. And last but not the least, I think we still have to wait. We have Sunita ji going to join us. Ananya, you can let us know when Sunita ji is here. And we'll introduce her when she's here. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the Missing Link Trust and why are we having this really important discussion today. So, a brief introduction into the Missing Link Trust. Missing Link Trust is an award-winning organization, and we use the power of innovation, education, and empowerment to prevent sex trafficking. We strongly believe that awareness equals to prevention, and we use innovative tools and methodologies for mass engagement. Our vision is to create a world where every girl is safe from sex trafficking. Our work for prevention of trafficking takes a 360-degree approach with our National School Awareness Program, which deals with a systematic awareness through innovative methods leading to a systematic prevention of exploitation and trafficking on one end, and on the other end, we have a dedicated working with vulnerable women in the Sundarbans, West Bengal, which accounts for 44% of reported cases of trafficking of India today. And we provide livelihood alternatives and lead them towards financial empowerment and independence. Our work is streamlined under our 3 pillars of education, innovation, and empowerment. We educate to create a new social fabric to end demand by developing a program like I mentioned. We use innovative mediums like gaming, murals with chatbots, public artworks, interactive digital comics to create a highly immersive and empathic learning experiences on sex trafficking. And our award winning Missing Game for a Cause puts players into victims' shoes, finding their way to elusive freedom. And it's proven to be a very, very powerful medium for empathy building. And while the empowerment is mainly in the Sundamans, where we work on the livelihood program, like we mentioned. So, taking this opportunity in sync with our mission to sustain the public dialogue on not only the grave issue of trafficking, but the overarching social phenomena of gender based violence, we are going to have this discussion today. So, I know we are waiting for Sunita ji to join us.
I've already joined, Leena.
You are here. I didn't
Yeah.
spot you. How are you? I'm so
I'm
glad.
good. Just running and joining you. That's all.
Lovely.
Practicing. Yeah.
Yeah, finally I have you on one of my panels. I'm really, really happy, Sunita ji.
I'm
Sunita
glad
ji,
to.
I'm sure needs not much of an introduction to most of you here. She's a social activist and chief functionary and co-founder of Prajwala, a non-governmental organization that rescues, rehabilitates, and reintegrates sex trafficked victims into society. She's making it possible for NGOs to jointly manage protective and rehabilitative services for victims of trafficking or commercial exploitation. She was awarded India's fourth highest civilian award, the Padma Shri, in 2016. So actually, I should say Padma Shri Sunita G. Krishnan, as protocol says.
I'm very scared of that kind of a title. There have been times when people have been calling me like that, and then suddenly you start forgetting your own name. Then you think your name is Padmashri and not Sunita Krishnan. So I rather be just Sunita Krishnan.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm learning my P's and Q's because I'm still quite a bit of an artist, but I would like to still maintain it. So today we are here, like I was talking to you all, even a little bit or before the pre-discussion we had about the very important issue of adolescent sexuality. So today I'm going to start with a question which I would like each of you to answer. And how has the conversation around sexuality evolved over the last decade in your experience? How have perspectives and connotations changed from pleasure to danger to banality or otherwise? So, how has this discussion transformed? Ananyadi, would you like to go first? We can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
It's very interesting when you talk about this, that whether we have progressed. Unfortunately, I have very strong views on this. I think we have regressed. A very large section of India has regressed because of the serials that we watch. So serials have tied women to marriage. Good women get married, they stay married, they work overtime to ensure that their marriages work, and they don't look at other men, etc., etc. Everyone is doing karwa chauth, everyone is doing this and that to keep their marriages working. For every crisis, they have the thali in their hand. So the image of this chaste woman has been highlighted so much. It has been made such an important component of Indian society because of the soaps. And the television is now in every household. It is into our bedroom. It is everywhere. That I think this has very severely affected our progressive thinking. I remember when I was a child, when I was a young woman, I never saw women wearing sindoor from here, or and I never saw that people were celebrating Karwa Chauth the way they are doing it now. That has suddenly become very, very important. So marriage as an institution has suddenly come to, it has been foregrounded so prominently by the soaps, that sexuality has taken a backseat. That is not to say that the young generation do not talk about it. They do.
Yes.
And I'm sure that there is a very large section of people in the younger generation who do not have any taboos or any kind of moralities, middle class moralities that some of the soaps preach us. They're far more honest in their relationships, far more candid in their relationships. However, on the one hand, you have these soaps showing these pious, good women doing Karwa Chauth, etc. On the other hand, you see the Indian films. And why I'm talking about soaps and films is because they have a huge impact on society. So you have these Indian films where you find the liberated woman. You know, the heroines is no longer the Sati Sadhvi, Sati Savitri, fair, coy damsel. You find that the heroine is liberated. If you watch a film like Pink, or if you know in many other films, you find that women are liberated. They're talking about sex, and they're talking about sex without marriage, outside the realm of marriage. So there are two kinds of dialogues, narratives going on here. However, the more prominent narrative is the one in the soaps because there is a much larger viewership for that, and it goes into people's bedrooms.
And it's
So
all the
yeah,
time, every evening, every day.
yes, every evening kind of a thing. So I mean, this is what my preliminary opening comments are about. Yeah.
Sunita, would you like to add something to that?
I do not necessarily agree with Ananya ji. I have slightly different opinion. I do believe that in the last 30 years or so, there has been more openness in understanding sex and sexuality. Several words which were taboo in my growing up years now has become more acceptable. Differential orientation to sexuality, for that example. For example, or homosexuality or lesbianism, or even to think that you could be partners with your own sex and you can have a very thing. These are, at least in a certain layer of the society, this becomes more and more open in terms of using the right language, going through the right lingo. So it's so much more acceptance. I remember a few weeks back, a friend of mine from college had called me, and we were talking after 35 years. I finished college 35 years back, and he was connecting after 35 years. And as we were talking very casually, he said, my son has had a sex change operation, sex reassignment surgery. And I actually was like, oh my God. I mean, he's saying it so normally and casually. He says, and then I said, you didn't face difficulty? He said, yeah, there were people who spoke very funnily, but then, we thought we should, support our 26-year-old son's, decision. So I see in certain stratas of society, there is a lot more openness in the issues of sex and sexuality. But whether that is translated into understanding a overly sexualized world around us, I don't think so. A whole generation is now under the threat of being abused and violated, using sex and sexuality as a larger means. The banality of it, the violence of it, somehow that is not penetrated into the same strata yet.
Right.
While there is an acknowledgement, yes, like in today, more and more people are acknowledging that online spaces are becoming unsafe for our kids. There is online sexual abuse, online sexual exploitation, sexting, whole world of online sexual crimes that's increased. There's an acknowledgement of that matter, but whether it is translated into, penetrated into our thinking in terms of, oh my God.
Understanding of it, of why, that I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
let's face facts. We are surrounded by an extremely heavily loaded, sexualized world. You touch the OTT platform,
right.
you
So
wonder from where this language is coming from. You know,
So that's coming
I,
actually the next point I was coming to, because when I was talking to Vishakha, she spoke about how today we are digital. She's saying
yeah,
one foot is in the physical and one foot is in the digital. So in fact,
Absolutely.
that's supposed to be that's the next question, of course, which we'll be addressing of the online space. But coming back to even just basic understanding of sexuality, I do understand that you differ from Ananyadi. I know where Ananyadi is coming from because we have seen that in the Sundarbans also, because that's coming, I think that's more like a space which is more a rural space. While I think this can be demarcated when you talk about urban and rural, this kind of an understanding and that kind of a backwardness. Because,
I again beg to differ.
okay.
No, because I again beg to differ because few years back, just 5 years back, I was into a campaign called as Shame the Rapist campaign, which was triggered by some rape videos which were being circulated on WhatsApp. Now, when I started exploring the entire content, a huge content came from the rural space.
Yeah,
Meaning,
of course.
in the worst of my nightmares, I couldn't imagine that such remote villages could generate this kind of content, which is now playing on internet. So I would say there is a certain polarization of human beings, but let us not bring the urban and rural divide,
Okay.
because the internet penetration is very deep everywhere.
Yes, that's why
What
the
is happening now is certain kind of a different polarized understanding, and there's whole selling of certain things which has made people feel कि, okay, now we'll put all these sindoor, we will do this karwa chauth you want to exert your identity in a certain way which was not required many years back.
yeah. So I'll just take the question on to Vishaka. Vishaka, I would like you to now touch the other point of the digital, which you were mentioning, the increasing digital world, and you can add something more from the previous question also. So
Sure.
your take on that, yeah, and
Thank Thanks for having me, Lena. I think my perspective would really be that we live in a time when there are more mobile SIM cards in the country than there are human beings. And therefore, our lives today can no longer be considered on ground only, right? Our lives are constantly flowing between the digital and the physical, which is why I think of it as the phygital. And I think if I had to make an artwork of today, I would be like, hey, 1 foot on the ground and my hand would be up like that, holding my mobile phone, right? So, yeah, because that, right? And the mobile almost feels like it's an extension of your body, right? Yeah, the way we like, that's the first thing you look at when you get up in the morning, the last thing at night, blah, blah. But what I want to say is that, so I think in my view, the advent of digital technologies over the last 10 years, from 2009, when the mobile phone, the Android, has significantly shaped sexuality in both positive and negative, right? So on the positive, I would put just there's a, the kind of sexual expression across the population, and really, like we see even at workshops with rural teenage girls in West Bengal, etc., right? They are able to express sort of their interest in someone, right? Like a little bit of romance. So that's the positive. But at the same time, that can become a route for trafficking. So that's the negative, right? And similarly, again, like even if you take something like sexting is obviously something that's new, that's been created by the mobile phone technology. Because earlier, I'm also a filmmaker. Imagine if you take an intimate image of yourself, you're not going to trot down to your neighborhood developer and say, please develop this for me, right? So you need that phone. But the interesting thing again with sexting or other things is that, if we look at it as something that is done voluntarily, consensually, without coercion, right, then it's legitimate sexual expression. But the minute it's forced, coerced, used to blackmail, etc., it becomes negative, or it becomes a crime, actually, right? Or sextortion. So what I'm trying to say is, like many other technologies, including the simple knife, which you can use to cut a fruit or you can use to kill somebody, digital technologies has had a very similar dual effect. Positive, queer populations in India today organize online first because it's much less dangerous than in certain spaces. But at the same time, you can be surveilled on it. So it's both. We're always between pleasure and danger, and that is now very strongly influenced by the phone. Yeah.
Right. So that whole play of the digital space, like you were mentioning. And already we are speaking about adolescent sexuality and the influence of technology. We've been talking about that. So some of you would say technology has made exploitation easier for the perpetrators of violence. Like even now, beyond the use of beyond TV and beyond the digital content, it's also about technology being used for actual exploitation, which Vishakha was touching about. So others say it also increase the mobility of youth. This is just what she spoke about. So what is your take on this, the double-sided edge of?
I would tend to agree with what Vishakha said. Of course, a mobile phone or digital technology gives you an unlimited kind of freedom. It liberates you in many ways. Like, for example, the webinar that we are having now, four of us sitting in four different spaces and yet talking to each other very meaningfully. But at the same time, the danger is that even while we imagine that we are in a consensual sexual relationship while while on the digital thing, anyone can record it. Any of the partners or both the partners can record it, and at a later date it can be used. That is the danger. I am getting so many of such cases. And some of the cases where it happened when maybe a year ago, when the person concerned was still a minor, but now has become a major. And it happens usually in cases where when the relationship there's a bad breakup. It's not always necessary that somebody did it willingly or did it willfully. Recorded it willfully, recorded it to someday blackmail the person. Somebody may have just recorded it for pleasure, that to watch it later. But then if there is a bad breakup or there's a sense of betrayal on either side, then often it is used, unfortunately, for other purposes. And therefore, that is the danger. And the other danger is that you believe that it is a genuine relationship, but you do not realize how you are being actually very gently coerced into something like that. We know that it used to happen in earlier times. A boyfriend would tell a girl to take off her clothes and take a photograph. Chalo na, hum to pyari karte hain. I am only taking your photograph, kind of thing. It used to happen earlier also. So it is not the first time that it is happening. And the danger here is that if somebody actually records a sexual act, then and once there is you have a digital footprint, it can never be erased completely. Exactly. It will remain there, it will stay there. And you never know how it is being distributed, how many places it is being sent to. There is no end to it. Once you send it in one place, it goes viral. And then there is the dark web. Which it's so difficult to access. You don't know how it is being used and so on. So this danger is always there. This I'm talking about straight relationships where there's a man-woman relationship. But it also happens with gay relationships. And with gay relationships, it is all the more difficult for the other person. For a gay person to actually go to the police station and say that my partner did it, this person will have to fight so many stereotypes. So many stereotypes. The policeman might look at, there's so many prejudices and so on. But yes, I would agree with Sunita ji that there are many relationships which are happening, which many people are talking about it. But I would still say they are a very, very minuscule part of society. People actually accepting gay relationships or talking about gay relationships. It is a very minuscule part of society. It is definitely not the majority, definitely nowhere near the majority. The majority is still very hetero. The majority is still very pure, it has a
Yeah,
very
pure.
traditionalist way of looking at things. And uh, I think I think unless the society starts very seriously questioning the institution of marriage, the way it exists now, then we cannot really be sexually liberated unless we seriously question the institution of marriage.
Totally agree, right. So, Sunita, now building upon all this adolescent sexuality, technology, mobility, increasing scope of exploitation, which we've all touched on a little bit, I'm going to shift this to another section because we know this is happening and digital space is where it's happening. What is your take on the elopement of minors and child marriages in India and adolescent sexuality and in relation to adolescent sexuality? Because elopement is a direct consequence of their sexuality. Underage elopement, especially.
Yeah. So, first of all, I agree to Ananyadi and Vishaka's whole thing about, technology as a double-edged sword. Yes, it's a double-edged sword. And it's very important to recognize what Ananyadi said very clearly, is that whatever content is generated is irreversible. And that is something that every human being, adolescents, young adult has to understand. You're dealing with something which is an irreversible kind of thing, because I'm dealing with several online sexual exploitation cases, and I'm dealing with sex trafficking cases online, and the impact of that on the victim is also irreversible. Like, this child tells me that I don't want to walk on the road, don't want to walk on the street because I think everybody has seen my video. I'm never going to come out, and there's no way that I or anybody can assure to this child that this video can be destroyed completely forever. No, it may not be there on that site. It can be downloaded from there to some other mobile, and then it can, so there is a certain kind of a dead end situation that we are looking at, which all of us have to be mindful about, young adults, adolescents, and adults also. Having said that, elopement, um, sexuality, child marriages, it really bothers me that, legally we have not been able to sort this out. First of all, a whole big part of cases booked under rape section or POXO would be actually, elopement cases. Something which
Yes.
which has happened with young
Willingly.
growing up willingly, and then here is a boy sitting in the jail because he's charged of kidnap. Here's a man or a boy or whoever, and then here is a girl who is now declared to be a rape victim, but actually is not a rape victim. you know and she lands in some shelter like our shelters, and is kind of looking at her watch every 2 minutes saying, oh, when is going to be 12 o'clock in the night of my 18th year, then I can go back to my boyfriend. So we are giving a lot of mixed signs and signals on what is right and what is how it is done. And therefore I think the need of the hour today, is to broaden our own horizons in what is it that we want to speak to our young persons. How do you understand your own sex and sexuality? How do you give an expression to that sex and sexuality? What is the age where your body is ready to take an informed decision, and what is the age where you can take responsibility? What is not only the age but the state and phase in your life where you can
Right.
take the responsibility of another person? This, we need to start changing the narrative with which
Right.
we have been speaking to our young adults, because the problem that I see is so many thousands of young people from West Bengal to Hyderabad, I would say, when at the drop of the hat would elope, never realizing the consequences,
Right.
the implications, not just the legal implications, which is there, which is kind of so destroying, but also the consequences to your own body and your soul, in terms of you can't even take responsibility for another person. all because you want to give an expression to your sex and sexuality. And I want to make it very clear that I differentiate between sex and sexuality, you
Right.
know. And
Totally.
that, so sex education is not sexuality education for me,
Yes,
you
yes,
know.
totally.
So
That's
we
what
need,
we're talking about adolescent
so
sexuality. Yeah.
yeah, so we need to start, we as adults, first of all, we need to
Mhm.
start sorting out ourselves in
And the
what is the right semantics we use, what is the right language we use, what is the kind of acceptable narratives that we create. Because somewhere, in so-called sex education, we are
right,
getting lost in terms of, okay, we have to create sex education for children. That doesn't
right.
solve the purpose of what I'm going through my body, yeah, what I'm feeling, the desires I'm feeling, and my need
Totally.
to gratify that desires and things like that. Also,
Something.
I feel um, we have, our generation is a retarded generation.
Mhm.
That is my take on our generation.
Yeah.
We 40 plus 45-year-olds, above 45, all of us are retarded stage, because we are not equipped to handle the
Mhm.
emerging
Mhm.
exposure that our adolescents are having.
Exactly.
you know they are
That's
not
very
coming from a world, like I come from a phase when I used to think, like, if two pigeons come and do beak to beak like this, or two roses come and touch here, there will be a child born. Okay? Because that's the kind of movies that we saw. Okay? The two flowers coming or two pigeons coming. Our children today, our adolescents, are not coming from that age. you know they Here is group of adolescents, like you see the web series Mismatched. You'll see
Mhm.
14-year-olds and 16-year-olds smooching,
Mhm.
talking about lesbian association, and
Mhm.
whether you're straight or gay and things like that, and actually accessing porn very happily. We need to understand today's adolescents, whether it is in the rural sphere or in the urban sphere, are
Mhm.
far more sexually exposed than we were. But
Totally. We have to
we have not
understand.
changed our narrative,
We have.
and we are expecting them
I'm,
to
yeah,
understand things which we
Yeah.
ourselves don't understand.
right. I'm
So
going to
we are the
ask.
confused lot.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Bishakha the next question because you're the person who's creating narratives and you are using the media. So we're talking about this real lag in what actually is and what we are saying and the language which we are not really, the vacuum. So what is your take on this, Bishakha? Because of what you do, this would be a perfect question for you to answer.
Um, Sorry, I was a little distracted because there's some work going on in my house. Yeah. Can you just repeat that, please,
No,
Leena?
because Sunita was mentioning that there's a whole gap in our understanding about what we are saying right now and what the adolescents are facing because we have been that generation who's not experienced what they are. And so our understanding of it and our expressing of it is totally not in sync with what their world is. So how we have to clarify in our heads about how are we going to address it and if we are going to really help them in understanding their sexuality.
So I think the first thing that I would say, and actually I want to start with the elopement thing because maybe that will clarify it. So I
Mhm.
think the way I would see elopement, just one second. Yeah. I think the way I would see elopement would really be that it's actually an expression, right, by this young person.
Yes,
Think
yes.
about it. Like, think about a young woman in a village, right? And all of us were young at some point in time, and all
Mm-hmm.
of us had barriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, this girl, she may be in love with some young man. He may be from another caste, he may be from another religion. The only sanctioned sexuality in her village may be within marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, she has sort of grown up thinking that, she needs to get married to the person in order to validly sort of exercise her sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then if her parents are not going to give her that freedom
Mm-hmm.
to make her own choices, right? Or to exercise her own sexual
She might
agency.
also be underage, she's not even.
True, but she may also be 19, right?
Mhm.
And what is it you expect her to do? I frankly want to say that I think elopement as long as it does not end in trafficking, meaning elopement, which is actually for the purposes of romance, in my view, is an legitimate expression by someone who doesn't have the power
Sure.
to express it in any other way, right? So what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that I think we also, as another generation, need to sort of think of a younger version of ourselves, you know, and think about like the barriers that we sort of faced when we tried to exercise our sexuality, and sort of start from that place. And frankly, when you're a teenager or you're in your early 20s, for most of this country, your parents are a barrier. This is the truth. Because, you know, sexuality begins with like the right to do what you want with your body, the right to make your own romantic
I was
choices.
making a point here. What we are actually talking about, like what Sunita also spoke about, we're talking about really adolescent elopement, which we are seeing a lot of. We are seeing 15-year-olds run. We are seeing 16-year-olds run.
But you know what? I want to say something, Lena. I am now 55 years old and I fell in love with someone when I was 16. And what's the harm in that?
So that's
Come
fine.
on.
We're talking about making them
So I'm
understand.
sorry, I cannot accept this reasoning that just because we have a totally random figure which is called the age of consent, that everything that happens below it is somehow harmful. You know, it isn't.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm going to come to the age of marriage now. I mean, beyond like Sunita was talking about the clock striking 12 and when I'm 18, when I'll get married. And now the government is all set to make it 21. Kya hone wala hai? I don't know. Sunita, you
Leela,
can
can I just say one thing, please? I just want to respond to
uh,
what Bishaka was saying. You know, I
uh,
like this idea of rights and everything. You know, it sounds perfect for me. But for me, the point here is with the rights comes responsibilities too.
of course.
And you know, rights and duties and rights and responsibilities to yourself, especially to your own self, is intertwined. And that is an understanding that adolescents who exercise their right to run away, you know, because end of the day it is the, you know, the hundreds and thousands of cases that I deal with. A dumped girl, pregnant, you know, she eloped with this guy, she got pregnant, he's dumped and gone, nobody's taking responsibility for that baby, she's now handling the pregnancy and things like that. So every act of yours has a consequences for you, and you need to understand the implication of exercising that right, because that is also part of your responsibility. Just not that I only exercise my right to you know, feel liberated to do what I want to. And that is why the age of consent and all those become so important.
No,
Because
I honestly, I
Vishaka
you know
has
what? I agree with you up to a certain point, but there's an underlying assumption that young people are inherently irresponsible. That I won't agree with. I agree that rights and responsibility go hand in hand, and it's frustrating when they don't. But the assumption that, you know, teenagers, adolescents are just somehow fundamentally irresponsible, that I do not agree with, and that is not borne out in the workshops or the people we see across the country. And I just want to, you know, I know this is an interesting, I want to talk about actually one thing, which is consent, right?
Of course, consent we should be talking about, right? Yeah.
But I feel it's very important in the digital age that we talk about layers of consent, you know, because image has come center stage. So now if I am, say, a 19-year-old, right, and I'm having an intimate moment with a young man, one is that has to be consensual. But secondly, if there's any photography or videography, that has to be consensual. And if there's any distribution, that has to be consensual. So we've actually been asking.
Yeah. This is all becoming part of the language which Sunita is saying, that there is a whole gap in understanding of what we are telling our children what they should do, and what our understanding of it and what they are expressing and feeling. Like Ananyadi, you wanted to add something to this space?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I find this conversation to be extremely interesting and very, very important, because this is what I have been arguing for the last 2 years. When dealing with cases of POXO, we actually did a survey, and we discovered that we did a survey that because after the POXO was passed, 5 years had passed. So we worked in partnership with an NGO, and I asked them to actually look at all the cases where 16-year plus girls are into POXO. There are cases of 16 plus girls, and how many of them were genuine. So she did that survey for us in 5 districts in Bengal, and it turned out almost all of them were fake cases. These girls were actually in love. They had actually wanted to run away or wanted a relationship, but the father of the child or of the girl was not willing. So therefore he slapped a POXO case on this boy. So after this, we had a round table because we felt it was very important to take a relook at POXO and this whole thing about consent. And I've always felt that, like Vishaka is saying, that I always have very strong opinions about this consent, this age of consent kind of a thing. On the one hand, you're saying that till the age when you are 17 years and 364 days, you do not have a right to consent. Or in other words, you have no rights over your own sexuality, over your own body to decide anything. And then the moment you are 17 years, 365 days, which is you are 18 years, you can get married. And on the night of your marriage, your husband can rape you, but you can do nothing about it because in our country, marital rape is not illegal. It is okay to rape your wife. So a woman, either way, she has no rights over her body or her own sexuality. So what consent are we talking about here, first of all? Secondly, who decided or who said that till 18, we are all asexual human beings, and suddenly from the age of 18, you become sexual. You're ready for marriage, you're ready for children, etc., etc., etc. That is, according to me, bull and crap. A lot needs to be questioned here. So we had a round table after we did that survey. And what came out is that POXO is a protectionist act. It is not a rights-based act. It's a protectionist act. And it is in complete denial of the world of adolescent sexuality.
Right.
There is a world of adolescent sexuality which POXO must recognize. So our recommendation to our own state, because POXO is a central act, we can't change anything. We can only send in our recommendations. Our recommendation was, first, to bring down the age of consent to 16. B, to decriminalize adolescent sexuality.
Excellent.
And C, to differentiate between a sexual act and a sexual offense. So when two individuals are indulging in a sexual act, if they both want to get into that act, it cannot be termed as a sexual offense. There is a difference between the two. So when you constantly keep denying people their legitimate desires and wishes, and it's not a good thing to remain in a world of denial. That no. Before 18, you cannot even look at a boy. You cannot kiss him. You cannot do anything, and so on and so forth. So this is what we had recommended. I don't know how far it has gone. I personally have very, very strong feelings, strong opinions about this whole concept of consent and sexuality. Yes, we must be responsible. We must understand the consequences of things.
Yes.
And in a lot of cases, as Vishaka was saying, children actually run away because if the parents come to know that that the girl is involved with somebody, then they would quickly try to get her married off.
Right.
We have received so many of such cases.
Right.
So many of such cases. When I personally dealt with a family, and when this girl was rescued, we could prevent the marriage. It was a Muslim family. And everyone was very scared because the father is very influential, etc., etc. So I said, I want to meet this man, this very influential, very, very scary man. And I met him, and I told, and he seemed, actually, he was quite a nice man. So I said, I'm sorry that the marriage was fixed, and the feast was arranged, and the guests came, and we had to break up the marriage, but we have to do it. We cannot allow your daughter to be married off at 16. So he said, even I don't believe in, in marrying off my daughter at 16. I married my wife very young, and my wife she still has health problems because she got married very young.
That's another issue.
However, he said that she was having a relationship with this boy who's good for nothing. So that's the reason why I wanted to get her married off. So I said, in order to prevent one thing, you were doing something wrong. You could have counseled her, you could have spoken to her, you could have spoken to the boy.
Our language has to change. How we are dealing with the situation again and again. We are coming back to that. Sunita, you want to say something?
Alina, two things. In the digital age that we are living in now, we need to really, really break our head and get to understand what is this consent. When grooming is the norm, especially on the online space, and you can actually groom a person to believe that this is what is the most right thing for you at this particular time. You groom a person and take their things. So how do you differentiate that this is pure consent and this is a groomed consent? Those are things, those are layers. We can't be too simplistic. POCSO is a very simplistic legislation. It takes black or white. Anything before 18 rape, anything after 18 consensual. So it's like a black or white. The point of the matter is, today we are living in a world which is very gray. It's not black or white. And therefore, to even say what is the age of consent, I really don't know what is the age of consent. Consent for what? Consent for what? Consent for having sex, consent for taking the implications of sex, consent for taking the responsibility that comes with sex. What are we talking about? That is one thing that I want to raise. I completely understand and agree with Anindya these difference between sexual act and sexual offenses. I believe that in fact we are planning really strongly to file a Supreme Court PIL on that, because I feel a lot of energies of the police gets wasted, only on these elope cases, and a lot of energy of so many protective homes gets wasted in hosting young girls, who happily went somewhere and just waiting for, so this not only the girl child who's going through whatever she's going through, but it's a whole lot of young men also being, thing. And then you have another section of characters who will use the same thing to put a girl in an exploitative condition. So these are layers. So let us not be naive.
Now my next question is actually about the fact that if the government is planning to change the age of marriage to 21 years, for me that's like a breeding ground of creating more people to break laws, criminalization, victimization, and more exploitation to happen. So what would you all have to say? Ananya, do you want to say something on this first?
Yes, I think the four of us who we are speaking here, the class that we belong to, the kind of educational background that we have, none of us got married before 21. None of the girls in our family, you would forget about 21, they wouldn't even marry before 25 or 28. But that is because we had a certain kind of education, certain kind of privileges. But when you're looking at a country, the kind of population that we have, the kind of educational level that we have, the kind of poverty levels that we have, unless the state invests heavily in quality education and in social justice, in socially uplifting families, socially and economically uplifting families, this only looks to me as a political stunt, nothing else. That you don't do anything on the ground you leave the ground as it is, and when suddenly you decide to erect a statue that no marriages before 21, it doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work.
Vishaka? Okay, so of course, Sunita. Sunita.
I think my perspective is that government should never get involved in this kind of businesses. You know, there is a point after which you stop meddling with bedrooms. You know, just leave that there. What is required is a huge change in the perspective and attitude of the communities, and it's more than the government. It is civil society organizations like ours, a whole lot of mass movement which needs to bring in a better understanding on what is the responsible age for marriage. You know, what is the economically viable age for marriage? What is the, you know, what suits you in terms of handling? Because marriage is not just about sex, right? It's a lot more than sex. It's about accountability to partners. So what is that time and phase when you are ready for that? That your mental preparedness, your economic preparedness, your whole world preparedness, and that requires an attitudinal preparedness by all of us. I think laws don't bring that. Laws make criminalize things or make things offense, which does not change the, you know, thinking of people. And that is why in this matter, I think 18 is 18, 21 is 21. You're fixed one line, you've made it there. Enough. You know, let, you know, others. So there's a whole women and child welfare department, there's a social justice department, there's so many departments who are just sitting there. No, give them the mandate. This should be also somewhere, you know, because I believe that we need to start taking relationships with accountability. You know, it's just not gratification of some desires. There are a lot more to a relationship than just, you know.
Right. Vishaka, I know you were talking about consent, which I want to take you back to because I didn't let you talk too much about that. And I know for you, even adolescents, you can feel responsible about what steps they're going to take. But we were talking mainly in the underage section, not just about 18 and above, when we were talking about elopements. So what do you want to touch on the consent which you were talking about and in digital age and what it means for adolescents, because you yourself have been somebody who fell in love at 16. You probably would be the best person to express that.
Do you think that we never fell in love at 16?
I did.
So all of us must have, all of us must have gone through all that.
Yeah. Yeah, Vishaka, anyway, why don't you just elaborate on something which you were talking about? Yeah. Hello, Vishaka, are you there?
Leena, my internet connect. My Wi-Fi is spotty. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Vishaka ji, just take out your video. Your sound might come better then.
Yeah, if you want to take off the video and check.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, unfortunately, I can't really hear you properly. Something went haywire in my connection. So I couldn't hear the question, unfortunately. Yeah. So I don't know what to talk about.
You have to repeat the question, Leena.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to talk about, I did cut you off when we were talking about consent. So if you want to elaborate about consent, especially in the digital age and in context with adolescents.
Okay, I think, you know what, I really feel like one of the things is that one is just on the age of marriage. In my opinion, that's not the most crucial issue that we need to address, right? When it comes to marriage, I would much prefer to see a more affirmative approach where actually, you know, governments are helping young women and young men prepare themselves for marriage instead of this sort of like punitive kind of approach, which is really not going anywhere. It feels a bit like a red herring. I think in terms of consent, I think I would like to say that to me, the foreline of consent still remains the distinction between the sexual act and the sexual offense, right? And I think it's very important in the digital age where we are circulating images, all sorts of things like all the time, that we really build at a very young age an ethics of consent, not just to sexuality, but really to everything. I think we really need an ethics of consent to like everything. It could be just a simple taking just a random photo, but you getting that person's permission before using it, right? It doesn't even have to be a romantic. So what I think is missing, unfortunately, in the digital era online is a broad ethics of consent has completely vanished. And people feel like this is just like free for all, right? Like you can do whatever you want with whatever. And that to me has to be instilled at a much younger age. And then we can build on to it aspects, right? And I'll give you a very simple example is gender is a very important factor here. Often when we ask young people in villages, like, what are the issues that you face online? Often they say that, my boyfriend is coercing me to share my password with him. So in an earlier generation, people used to say, if you love me, you will share your whatever with me. Now it's like, if you love me, you will share your password with me. And it's in queer relationships, trans, straight, everywhere. But, then what happens is the problem is this notion of love. Why does it have to be that you have to share passwords as a proof of your love, right? And then we need to tackle some of these social aspects of sexuality, which are being expressed through technological means. So some social aspects we have to solve anyway, regardless of what the technology is.
Lena, you're saying something?
I think Lena's connection has now gone a little. Yeah. Okay, great.
I'm back. Sorry. The notion of
I
love.
like your sentence, Vishaka. Ethics of consent. I like that.
You need that, right? It's really
very,
not.
very important. Yeah.
Yeah, the language.
Yeah. And if you add it with our patriarchal constructs that we have, pativrata nari means you have to be like this, like this, like this, and just add on to all those fringes. You are a good friend, you have to be like this, like this. So now if you're a good girlfriend, you have to give your password to somebody, or if you're a good girlfriend and you remove your clothes and get your nude picture done with him. So
These norms.
all these old norms now, packaged in new
Absolutely.
covering is something that if we don't address it,
Right.
and as Vishaka ji is saying, certain things laws cannot change. What can change is engaging at a deeper level with the communities and
Right.
working on the attitudes and perception.
Right. Yeah, like you're saying, sex ed today should not be just the old sex ed modules. They have to address many more sections and the gaps which we are facing today about like what we are from the older generation and what this generation is facing. I mean, I know we're nearly 1 hour and I had like billions of questions to talk about today and we're not anywhere there. But what my takeaway here today is that, of course, there's a very big dialogue here waiting to happen, which is not happening, and there's a gap in it, and which is leading to more exploitation of adolescents, more adolescents not knowing that their actions have more deeper consequences, be it eloping in, and then, of course, I mean, not even talking about trafficking. Out here, we're talking about consensual relationships, which might be leading to more exploitation, or or consequences in a society, which also leads to more victimization and which makes you it makes you more vulnerable to exploitation because of your past history, because you have an image out there, because, like we said, it can't be removed from the net. In fact, there was somebody who we met from Mexico who said in Mexico it's becoming so common for girls' pictures to be then becoming public, and it's like as if that that brand, that stamp on her forehead, that her picture is there, and those are the girls who are getting so vulnerable to becoming too trafficked and to be exploited.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's, Lina, the important thing for all the young people watching this, and
yeah,
even old people and adults like all of us, is to understand that in this digital age,
right,
having any content created of your intimate relationship, you'll have to think 100 times whether you're prepared to take the consequences of it.
yes,
What may be fantastic today may not be fantastic tomorrow, and therefore be very mindful of any digital content you create of your body and your intimate partner relationship.
yes. And Anidhi, do you want to say anything before we wrap up?
No, I think we had a wonderful, we had many wonderful perspectives. And while sometimes we differed, but we are actually saying the same thing. We were talking about
Absolutely.
the importance of consent and importance of, understanding different kinds of sexuality, and the importance of being liberated from, from many
Role
kind of,
model.
yeah, exactly. And we were all talking about addressing patriarchy. And to
Yes.
just wind up, as Sunita ji was saying, that there is a patriarchal coercion everywhere. It's there in marriage also. Even in sexual relationship in a marriage, there can be coercion.
Yeah, and it's taking new looks nowadays. Even the boyfriend is in that same space, telling you have to be a good girlfriend. You do this for me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Shaka, you want to say something before we wrap up?
Yeah, just to say that I think, if we think of life going ahead as hybrid, as phygital, then I think really what I want to see is both in physical and digital spaces, ways in which girls, young women, marginalized genders can, freely and fearlessly express themselves rather than always feeling unsafe and constrained or like the space doesn't belong to them. And I feel going forward, for all of us, the challenge is to keep not physical and digital spaces open for marginalized genders by removing all these barriers and really pushing against them, but not trying to close these spaces for.
Right. So I do have one last question because I just think we can push it in. Okay, talking about sex ed today, each one of you tell me one thing which you think sex education should have today, over and above what the old system had.
Pornography is what I would say, because so many people are watching pornography at a young age, and some people are able to process it and some people are not able to process it. And this is something sexuality education needs to assume that young people will keep watching porn.
Yes.
But how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the gap between, certain kinds of body shapes and sizes on screen and what you see in real life, right?
And the
How do
effects of
how do you understand that this is fantasy, not reality, and you
Yes.
can't expect reality to be this?
Sure,
How do
sure.
you ensure that young people do not replicate
Right.
without consent
Sure.
acts that they see online? So to me, that's really one of the big
Okay, that's great. And Anand, your take, what should one very important element missing in sex education today, which should be there?
It's the element of sexuality, that
Okay.
and alternative sexuality, that there can be many kinds of sexuality that must be included.
Okay. Asunita ji?
As of now, what is there in sex education is some biological processes, What requires now is the emotional and intelligence quotient to understand that all these are beautiful emotions that say body generates. There is differential orientation to sexuality. There's something beautiful. Use it in a way that gives you happiness and not in a way that can harm and destroy you.
Exploit. Okay, great. Great, Jai. That's so good. And I'm so happy to have it. I can't tell you, this is a much larger conversation, and I hope we'll have many more. And I just thought of one particular section which I thought was really important, adolescent sexuality. I want to have more such in the future, and I'll be in touch again. And we'll be doing some more like this. Thank you so much for being here, giving us the time and the valuable insights, because all your insights are going to be very useful, and we'll be sharing it with many more people. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Good
Bye,
seeing you,
Sunita.
Anya.